Phoebe is our newest 5-star resonator, and with that comes her signature weapon. So in this video, I'm going to go over her signature weapon, Luminous Hymn, and compare it to all the other weapons we currently have. I did some testing and calculations which were actually pretty surprising, so let's see if Luminous Hymn is worth it for you. Phoebe's rectifier, Luminous Hymn, has a base attack of 500 and a crit rate substat of 36%, and its effects increase attack by 12%, so pretty in line with what we already have. Dealing damage to enemies with Spectrofrazzle gives 14% basic attack and 14% heavy attack damage bonus respectively, and these can stack up to 3 times for 6 seconds. Casting Outro skill amplifies the damage from Spectrofrazzle on enemies around the active resonator by 30% for 30 seconds. Effects of the same effect cannot be stacked, and this is one of the few ways that you can actually increase the damage of Spectrofrazzle. So this is probably one of the most niche weapons that's been released so far besides Shorekeeper's signature weapon, so it won't be very versatile. Something that makes Phoebe's weapon unique compared to most other 5-star weapons is that it can increase her off-field damage, just like Jeji's and Yinlin's signature weapons can do. So don't forget that in the calculations I did, they're all for her personal on-field damage, and not including the off-field damage done by Spectrofrazzle. Also, unfortunately, even though Jeji's and Yinlin's signature weapons do increase the off-field damage, they don't increase Phoebe's off-field damage, because Phoebe's off-field damage is Spectrofrazzle, and that's separate. Phoebe's weapon isn't really meant to just increase her on-field damage, as it both increases her on-field and off-field damage. This is also seen in her outro skill that increases the damage of Spectrofrazzle and decreases Spectro Res by 10%. It will certainly increase her personal damage as it is a 5-star weapon and designed for her, but it also has supportive effects for her, so it will lower the on-field damage slightly to balance it out with the off-field damage that it can also give. So I did some calculations for her weapons, but I also did some actual in-game testing to get some real results, and honestly, they were pretty surprising. So first I tested in the hazard tower on the first floor with the ape, since it was relatively easy to get a consistent clear width without much variation, though it did have a massive 50% extra damage for enemies inflicted with Spectrofrazzle and 10% Spectro Res. So I didn't want that to be the only thing, even though the other towers had lower level enemies. So then I tested in the resonant tower on the 4th floor, which is the left side, and that was multi-wave with a boss, so it gave a mix of how she did against multi-wave and without the 50% extra damage, but instead it had a 40% attack and minus 10% Spectro Res. It is 20% attack that stacks up to 2 times, but since she gets 2 stacks of Jeji's weapon, I'm pretty sure she gets the full 40%, but I'll talk more about that weapon in a bit. Okay, so I tested with a pretty free-to-play team, being Spectre Rover on Rejuvenating Glow, and note that you need Spectre Rover's 4th sequence and S6 Sanhua on Moonlit Clouds. And the weapons I tested her on were her signature weapon Luminous Hymn, String Master, Yinlin's signature weapon, Rhyme Draped Sprout, Jeji's signature weapon, which I'll refer to as Sprout because that's kind of long, and note that it was 88 out of 90, so not that crazy, but I guess note that. R1 Augment from the Battle Pass, and R5 Jinzo Keeper. I didn't get to test the new Ocean's Gift, Waltz in Masquerade, Fusion Accretion, or the 5-star Cosmic Ripples, so those are what I focused my calcs on and went with the actual results of what I was actually able to test, and of course Phoebe is S0 in these. Starting with her signature weapon, it did always clear the fastest, but honestly not by that much. It's possible they can get more value in the future with the release of a limited character that works with Spectrofrazzle that's better than Spectre Rover, but honestly no sense in speculating on something like that. String Master and Sprout were honestly so similar that it'll come down to whichever will give you a better crit ratio or what kind of content you're going against, especially since Phoebe's Echo Set Eternal Radiance gives you a free 20% crit rate. Since the Sprout gives a ton of crit damage, it was super nice when going against a boss compared to the String Master, but in multi-wave it performed about the same. Something interesting about the Sprout is that Phoebe can get 2 stacks of the 12% basic attack damage bonus from Jeji's signature weapon, but they only last for 6 seconds, which is better than nothing. And Phoebe can only activate 1 stack of Yinlin's String Master for a 12% attack increase for dealing resonant skill damage. It's kind of weird that she can only get 2 stacks of Jeji's but only 1 stack of Yinlin's, but I guess it's better than nothing. The Battle Pass Augment felt noticeably worse than the previous 5-star weapon options, because while it still gave crit rate and 15% attack, its base attack was much lower, and since the Eternal Radiance gives you a free 20% crit rate, as long as you have at least like 55 to 60 crit rate, you might run into diminishing returns, since the most important thing you need to crit on Phoebe is her Resonance Liberation nuke. And finally, the most free-to-play option I have leveled is the R5 Jinzo Keeper, which has a slightly lower base attack than the Augment with 388 and a 36.5 25% attack as a substat, with an additional 15% attack in its effects. The 20% HP increase is negligible but nice to have, I suppose. The Jinzo Keeper gave me an overall 249 more attack, and considering you get a free 20% crit rate from her Echo set, I don't think you should feel compelled to get the augment just for Phoebe. It's more worth it if you have other characters that can use it and or higher refinements on it. Okay, so onto the weapons I didn't test myself, being the 5-star Cosmic Ripples, Ocean's Gift, Waltz and Masquerade, and the Fusion Accretion. The Cosmic Ripple is going to be a great 5-star option since the crit rate substat isn't as valuable as it normally would be. It is most important that Phoebe crits her Resonance Liberation, which is a nuke that can hit more than one enemy, typically dealing between 100,000 and 165,000 per enemy, or up to 200,000 in the Hezo Tower with the buffs. Besides that, it's mostly a lot of smaller instances of damage, similar to how Gion deals damage during his Resonance Liberation, and how Camellia deals damage after releasing her Concerto nuke. Since there are so many instances of damage, they aren't as high of damage, so that it is less noticeable when some of them don't crit, which is where attack percent's value comes in, and is why I value the Cosmic Ripples similar to the Stringmaster and Sprout if you have a well-invested Phoebe. If you are lacking in crit, then its value isn't as high. If Phoebe didn't get the 20% crit rate from her Echo set, I really don't think the Cosmic Ripples would be anywhere as competitive as it is. For the Fusion Accretion, it's literally just a worse Waltz and Masquerade since it has the same base attack and 18.2% attack substat, but it gives 12% less attack percent. The Ocean's Gift is like the Masquerade, but it gives Spectral damage instead of attack percent. Though the Ocean's Gift and Waltz and Masquerade are niche because of the effect requirements, so at the moment they are only useful on Phoebe, while all the other ones I've mentioned can be used on anyone else, so consider how much you want to invest in Phoebe and whether or not you have other characters that need a rectifier for damage that you might have on other teams. The rest of the available rectifiers either give energy recharge or HP percent, so you don't want to use them on Phoebe. These are just rough calculations after all, so your build and teams will vary with which weapon might be better for you. Again, I tested Phoebe at S0 on Eternal Radiance with all those weapons, with S6 Sanwa on the Moonlit Clouds Echo set and S6 Spectre Rover on the Rejuvenating Glow Echo set. If you want to see more testing of the other teams, check out my Phoebe guide where I go over around 22 different teams I tested with her. This is the updated weapon guide for her, so you can ignore the weapon information in that video. Luckily, Phoebe's free-to-play options are the most accessible ones, so you'll definitely be chilling if you don't have a 5-star option. That's all I have for now. Check out my full Phoebe guide if you want to know anything else about Phoebe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.